Then, after Houston tied the score in the ninth, manager Don Zimmer employed a rare strategy. With men on first and second and 2 out, pinch hitter Harry Spillman was intentionally walked to load the bases.
Now, a pass ball, a wild pitch, a base on ball would end the ball game.
And that's exactly what happened.
The game is over. He walked it. What started out to be a great Cub victory winds up a painful defeat, because this is a game you really kind of handed them.
The pain continued for 2 more days, with the Cubs suffering consecutive 8-4 defeats. On top of that, the last game ended on a 9th-inning grand slam off Mitch Williams. The following week, the Astros came to the House of Ivy and learned that turnabout is indeed fair play. But the first game started as painfully as the recent Astrodome experience. The Astros were scoring so often it took shorthand to keep track. And when Rafael Ramirez homered in the 5th, the score had reached an embarrassing 9-0.
When the wind's blowing out in Wrigley Field, you always know that no lead is safe. And we scored 9 quick runs off of them. And when you're in that situation, you know it can happen the other way.
9-0 is a forfeit score, but the Cubs were not ready to toss in the towel just yet.
Cubs!
In the bottom of the 6th, the Cubs started chipping away at the formidable Houston lead. The lead was shrunk even further when Lloyd McClendon batted in the 7th.
There's a drive in the center field, way back. Might be hit it! A 9-4 game.
But the Astros looked like they had no intention of stopping at a mere 9 runs. With Ramirez at second, Gerald Young slapped a hit to right, and Ramirez was headed home. Dwight Smith's throw to Joe Girardi nailed him, and the Astros would score no more. In the 8th, Ryne Sandberg got things cooking with an RBI single that scored Girardi. McClendon followed with a hit that drove in Jerome Walton to cut the lead to 2 runs. Mark Grace kept the roll going with a hit, and Sandberg scored, making the score 9-8. And McClendon was only 90 feet from tying the game. Dwight Smith hit a high fly to deep center, and McClendon crossed the plate to finally tie the game. Then, in the bottom of the 10th, Dwight Smith delivered the goods again.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win! Holy cow! Cubs win! Cubs win! After being behind 9-0, Cubs win!
It was only the second time in the long history of the Cubs that they had overcome a 9-0 deficit, and it was one of the sweetest Cub victories ever. On the streets of Chicago, there was a genuine excitement about the Cubs' chances. After all, it was September, and the Cubs were in first place. But even in the bleachers, home of the ebullient Bums, no one was giving anything away yet.
Cubs fans always pray that the team doesn't fold in late August or early September as it has traditionally. This is wonderful fun, but Cubs fans have been through it so often. You have to consider in the last 17 years this team has only been over 500 once. Chicago fans anticipate the worst, and the reason they do is because almost always that's what they've got.
If the play's the thing, as Shakespeare wrote, then what of the double play? While the Cubs play at Wrigley, Shadow Cubs play at the Organic Theater in a revival of the popular play Bleacher Bums. But if art imitates life, then the Cubs should not lose to the Cardinals night after night, as they do in the play. But if life imitates art, well, it might just be a case of drawing the wrong card. On September 8th, the Cardinals followed the script to perfection. But in the early acts, it looked like a laugher for the Cubs. Ryne Sandberg took the lead and delivered 2 home runs, including 1 big audience participation number. The Cubs had a 7-1 lead in the 7th. Then the plot twisted. Pedro Guerrero followed the stage version of the Cubs versus the Cardinals. His 8th inning homer capped a big Cardinal comeback and closed the Cubs show 11-8. Pedro enjoyed the bows, even if the audience wasn't calling for them.
I think that game sort of kicked us in the butt, that game that I came in and blew. I mean, that's all it amounted to. The team played fine.
We had a 7-1 lead against McGrane, and they come back and beat us on a Friday, and everybody kind of said, well, that's the end of the Cubs.
Now the Cards were just a half game out of first, and you can't shave it much closer than that. The newly acquired Luis Salazar came to bat in the next game with a man on and the score tied in the 10th. Not only had Salazar stroked the game-winning hit in the 10th, but his RBI single in the 8th had tied the game. Cub fans were learning to like the decentralized hero system that seemed to provide a different hero for every victory. Tonight, it was Luis Salazar. Tomorrow, it might be, well, take your pick. Speed and power marked the rubber game of the series. Starting pitcher Steve Wilson struck out 10 batters, and 4 Cub pitchers combined to fan 18 Cardinals. The Cubs were held scoreless over the first 5 innings, but in the 6th, Dwight Smith batted with a man on.
Smith drives one into left center field. Thompson back on the track. That might go. Goodbye! Home run for Dwight Smith. And the Cubs take the lead 2-1. What else can he do?
After the disastrous production 2 days before, the Cubs were on the verge of actually taking the series. Mitch Williams came on to record his 32nd save, and the Cubs won 4-1. The boys of Zimmer had turned back yet another challenge, and they were now 2.5 games ahead of the Cardinals. When the Cardinals left town, the Expos arrived, and the Cubs were looking to extend their first-place lead. In a tight game, the victory ended up being easy pickings. With 2 on and 2 out in the 9th, Mitch Williams caught Jeff Hewson leaning.
Oh, they picked him off! They picked him off! The game's over! The game's over! They picked the pinch runner off first base. The game is over. How about that? And Mitch Williams gets his 33rd save of the year.
The next night, even the stars in the stands were outshone by a luminous Chicago Cub. That night, Ryne Sandberg, beloved by his fans, reached a new height in his career.
There's a drive! Way back! It might be! It is! Out onto Waveland Avenue! Holy cow! Sandberg, 30th home run of the year!
In 1982, the Cubs acquired a promising new infielder. He's been there, gloriously there ever since. In getting Ryne Sandberg, the Cubs received a fellow who could not only field almost flawlessly, but also hit ferociously.
Day in and day out, this guy is a very, very good baseball player. He's as good a second baseman as you'll ever see.
He makes all the plays left and right. He makes all the double plays. He makes so few errors that when he makes one, you think the world's coming in on you. He hits for an average. He hits with power. He runs. He's a complete player, and I guess being asked the question as many times as I've been asked, I would have to say that he's probably the best all-around second baseman that I've watched.